am trying to get real with myself and with other white people, and it is painful work. There's a whole lot of blame toward black people for being the cause of how white people treat them, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of that. I decided to take a closer look at slavery, since that's such a big topic in the United States. There has been slavery all over the world forever, and all colors of people have enslaved other colors of people for as long as we know about. But the transatlantic slave trade, in which Europeans brought African and Caribbean black people to the United States to be free labor in the new colonies before they were really the United States, is a whole different story of slavery. Slavery historically had to do with who won and who lost a war, who was convenient, who stumbled by at the wrong time, and so it wasn't specifically race-based. So why did these white Europeans choose black people to enslave? Because their physical differences from whites made it easier to create lies that they were biologically inferior. They invented science to defend this. It was easier to make these people who looked so different from us less human. And that lie made it easier to justify torture, rape, family separation, and death on a massive scale. And it made them, quite frankly, easier to identify if they tried to escape. The legacy didn't disappear when slavery ended. Eugenics came along and fed the racial superiority notion of whiteness, and it influenced the Nazi narrative along with the racial one. It carried over into segregation, Jim Crow, housing, policing, incarceration, education, all of that. If we're ever going to fix what's broken, we need to get curious enough to name how it got broken in the first place. White people need to get curious so we can say no more, not on my watch. It was 1607 when English settlers were sent by the Virginia Company of England to found Jamestown in Virginia, the first colony in the Americas. The goal of the Virginia Company was to get rich. The settlers had their own agendas like religious freedom and escaping tyranny, but the Virginia Company was their ride. 12 years later, in 1619, the first ship carrying African slaves got there. That was no coincidence. That was 1600's prime delivery, a gift from the Virginia Company. They had been watching Spain and Portugal profit from enslaved Africans for many years, since the 1400s, and they swiped their business model. They also used indentured servants. Some of my ancestors were indentured servants. But there's some disagreement about whether the African slaves were originally indentured, but it didn't really matter because they ended up being chattel. White indentured servants had contracts, and they had a shot at freedom after 4 to 7 years usually. When their time was up, they often got land or goods to help them start fresh. Black Africans were enslaved for life, and to ensure that they stayed that way, the colonists made laws about it. If your mama was a slave, you were a slave, your kids were slaves. There really wasn't a way out. But that was the plan all along, because think of the business aspects of it. Once you bought a person, you never had to buy them again. You never had to pay them except to keep them fed well enough that they didn't die. And you could breed them. It's disgusting. To make people feel okay about all this, language became peppered with things like, they're childlike and they need our guidance. Does that ring a bell with anything you might hear today? Like, they just need more discipline at home. They need stronger role models. It's all victim blaming, dog whistles, gaslighting, and it's still part of the culture. And it carries down from way the hell back then. The colonists passed laws to make sure slaves did not learn to read because an educated slave was bad for business. Fast forward to Reagan's trickle-down economics theory. That never worked when it came to wealth. The rich just hoarded their money. But racism trickles. It always has. And it can be so effective that white people don't recognize it as racism because we aren't looking for it. We're too comfortable. get curious and follow for episode 3, When Race Became Law, the Unnatural Birth of Whiteness. I've never owned anyone. My neighbors, as far as I know, have never been owned by anyone. But the people who say we don't owe any reparations for the Civil War are ignoring something really huge. Or maybe they just don't know. Some people already got reparations. White people. White enslavers were paid for losing their human property. The actual people who were raped, tortured, whipped, and sold, and worse, were promised land to get a fresh start after the war, but they got nothing. When slavery was abolished, Congress paid nearly $1 million, which is 30 million in today's bucks, to white enslavers as compensation for losing their property in a war they lost. If a freed person didn't hit the road fast enough, they risked being re-enslaved under new laws that were just workarounds for all these white people losing their slaves. After the Civil War ended, Union General Sherman set aside 400,000 acres of confiscated Confederate land for black families to start new lives on, up to 40 acres each. The Army loaned out mules to help them work the land. That's where the phrase 40 acres and a mule comes from. Black people were already working some of this land when Lincoln was assassinated and Andrew Johnson became president. Well, Johnson reversed the order. He gave the land back to the same Confederates who had just tried to destroy the country. The freed people were evicted. So they made all these things into crimes that were non-crimes. They were things like, if a black person didn't have a job, that was a crime. If a black person couldn't prove that they had a job, that was a crime. You could get arrested for that and a lot of other ridiculous things. But once you were in jail, you could be leased out as labor for private profit. This system of convict leasing allowed white landowners and businesses to replace slavery with something just as violent, just as profitable as slavery. No wonder there are still Confederate flags all across the South. Even after slavery was abolished, black Americans were not safe. Public lynchings became a regular threat. They were a form of terror used to keep free people in their place. They were planned events announced in advance so everybody could attend. They were held in broad daylight. White families brought their children to watch black people being hanged, tortured, brutally murdered. It was a festival. People sold food. There were postcards made. People could buy postcards of the mutilated bodies hanging from trees and mail them in the mail or keep them as souvenirs. This country took care of Civil War criminals and punished the ones the war was supposed to free. And there was a lot more abuse I just can't fit into this video. Next time I'm going to talk about the stuff that happened in relation to the Great Depression and World War II. And then after that, I'll have one on civil rights, the era when I was growing up, how it all ties in to the racism that is part and parcel of our grand land today. White people, you especially need to get curious. Join me in this research, and you'll find that people are willing and able to come in with their education and their experience to help you learn. You just have to be open to it. We need to be willing to be uncomfortable.
And I kept it very brief and vague on purpose. So yesterday I posted a video giving a very basic definition in my own words of what white privilege is. And I kept it very brief and vague on purpose because I had a feeling people would start arguing in the comments, which they did. But I also thought it was super interesting how many people were commenting that I have white guilt, that I want to be black, and that I'm dying for the attention of the black community. First of all, yes, I have white guilt. You should too. Anyone who grows up with the knowledge that they have systematic advantages over other people just because of historical events and historical discrimination should feel a little guilty about that. Whether or not they contributed to that is a whole other thing, but you're reaping the benefits of it. People act like white guilt is something to be ashamed of, but if you use it in the right way and you use it to further reduce injustice, it's a good thing. And when people talk about systematic injustice and things like that, and they say, oh, everyone's equal, and this is happening in the comments, there's no racism anymore, everyone's equal, obviously don't understand what systematic means. And I'm going to give an anecdotal story just to really hit this on the head. I am white, and on both sides of my family, we do not have any massive generational wealth. My mom's father is the only one of my 4 grandparents who we got any sort of generational wealth inherited from. And 99% of the wealth that we inherited from my grandfather was from selling his house. My grandfather was born in 1926 in rural North Carolina, and he was a 6'3" white man with blue eyes. And other than being white, my grandfather didn't have that many privileges. He was one of like 7 children. His mom didn't even get to high school level education, and his dad never went to college. They were not privileged in most other ways that we define privilege, but he was a white male in a very, very racist country. What his whiteness allowed him to do was work his way through college. At the time, there were colleges that weren't accepting black people, and he was accepted to college as long as he could pay for it. And he ended up getting a law degree and becoming very successful. And again, never hoarded any significant wealth, but bought a house outside of Washington, D.C. in the 50s in a neighborhood that was redlined. And actually, my mom, who was born in the 60s, remembers in the 70s when the first black family moved into their neighborhood, because it had literally been sectioned off and realtors would not sell to black families. And my mom, who is 58 years old, went to a year of segregated school. So for all of you saying, it was so long ago, everyone has equal rights now, get over it. My mom remembers when the first black student joined her class in the 70s in Alexandria, Virginia. In 2015, my grandfather died, and we sold his house that he bought for around $100,000 in the 50s, and we sold it for $1 million. That money was divided among his children, and my family was able to get out of a lot of debt, and it completely reset my ability to go to private versus public school, my ability to afford tutors, my ability to become the educated person that I am. And it was all really because I have a white grandfather. Let me finish. Had my grandfather been black and had all of the other skills and background that he had, he couldn't have gone to the schools that he went to. He wouldn't have been hired in the jobs that he was. And he couldn't have bought the house that he did, that, 65 years later, put his family out of debt. So if anyone tries to tell you it's not that deep, it really is that deep. It goes so far back. Any small privilege that a white person has is probably, to some degree, due to their whiteness. And if you are a white person who has roots in the South, you definitely should have white guilt, and you definitely should be doing the work to understand how your privilege affects the people around you and how you can help level the playing field. Because you, almost 100%, have an ancestor who owned black people. So yes, I have white guilt. Yes, I'm aware of my status as a white woman, and I'm aware of the parts of my identity that are privileged and the parts that aren't. But saying that you have a certain type of privilege doesn't mean that you have every privilege. It just means that that aspect of your identity is favored by society. So I can talk about being a white woman, and that makes me privileged. But if I talk about being a woman, that is actually a disadvantage in a lot of ways. And everyone tried to get all particular about these specific situations where a black person might have a privilege or a woman might have a privilege over a man. Those are isolated situations you're bringing up. We're talking about large-scale, mass, systematic issues. And it's a lot deeper than just, I felt racism as a white person at one point. Fine, yeah, all of us can experience what feels like discrimination based on race. But that doesn't mean that it's systematically affecting you and stopping you and your families from catching up. That's really what it is. Now, yeah, legally, black people and white people should have the same exact rights and privileges. But they're playing catch up, because if my family, like I said, had been black, we would never have gotten out of debt in 2015. I would never have been able to afford the school that I went to and live the lifestyle that I'm living right now. And that's because of effects from over 70 years ago. So thanks for listening. And yeah, white guilt's okay.
White supremacy relies on having an uneducated population, and that is exactly what Trump's administration in the White House is creating today. Anti-intellectualism isn't just concerning because individuals don't know how to read or write at a high level. It's concerning because they don't know how to recognize patterns that are happening in society. don't want you to recognize the historic danger of banning books or realize that in 2023 alone, more than 3,000 books were banned, mostly about sexuality, race, and gender. They don't want you to recognize that erasing history is dangerous, like how Florida changed slavery to involuntary relocation, or that the GI Bill that built the American middle class, including my family, excluded black veterans. Why? Because if you understood the way that racism is built into the foundation of this country, you would demand change. You would have to if you have any sort of conscience. From education to housing to policing, go back 30, 50, 70, 90 years and the pattern is all there. White supremacy needs you to be uneducated and complacent in your current status. So what is the most radical thing that you can do today, especially as a white person? Get educated, read a book, stop dismissing critical race theory as woke propaganda and actually look at the foundation of what we are saying and you will literally be shocked. Let's talk about who the American dream was never meant for. From the start, the American dream was a myth. In the 1930s, the US government literally drew lines around primarily black neighborhoods in order to deny them loans, a process today known as redlining. Not only was this harmful because it kept black Americans out of homes, but it also denied them access to generational wealth. Meanwhile, throughout the 20th century, black workers and immigrants were exploited in factories, in mines, and in fields, while the rich got even richer. Not to mention union busting and wage theft kept families in poverty for decades, and we can even see those effects today. It's not that the American dream is broken, it's that it is a myth for the majority of people. It was meant for white middle class people who had the resource to try to elevate themselves to the top 1%. So by supporting billionaires like Elon Musk or like Mark Zuckerberg, you are supporting a system that actively hurts minorities as well as the everyday people just like you. It's time for us to rebuild a system that is truly fair and equitable for everybody. Peace and love.
So white people and people from the other races across the world have always had this tendency of blaming black people, like anytime that something goes wrong, anytime that things are not working out in the way that they expect should work out, they blame black people for it. And I also noticed that anytime the things are okay, they do not want to talk about black people, they do not want to involve them, they do not want to even have a discussion about black people. But anytime things are wrong, things are not going in the direction in which they perceived would go, they blame it all on black people. And black people, I think one thing that has made them an easy target is the fact that they rarely talk back. They rarely defend themselves. They rarely confront these issues or confront the people. Now you would be wondering why they do that, but if you know black history for a fact, then you know that these people have been there's a lot of injustice that has been done to them before. There's a lot of ills and atrocities that have been done to black people so long so that they have almost gotten used to it. Now, this is a very sad thing to even get used to, but that's the reality of things. They have seen worse situations. These are people that have gone through slavery. You can only imagine how their families have been, being raised in families that have a history of slavery, being broken, being taken advantage of, being tortured, all those things. So they now have people that are so used to being, looked at a certain type of way that they do not even want to fight anymore. They tried fighting when they could, and it did not give any fruit at all. So they got to a point where they know that America is not for them. America does not care about them. America does not fight for them, and their rights are not the rights same as those of white people. Now, they decided after that they are going to be quiet about everything. You do them any injustice, they will not say a thing. You hurt them, they will not say anything. You take away what belongs to them, they will not confront you. Yeah. And you see, that is the damage that America has done to black people. And on top of that, they keep blaming them. Anything that goes wrong, even in a community where people do not know who has done something wrong. For example, if someone has been killed and just found dead, the first people that will be suspected is black people. And sometimes, and most times, turns out that it's not even black people involved. But that is the society that has been programmed to think that black people are capable of ills, they are capable of everything bad, yeah? Everything bad, anything bad you can think of is associated with black people. Now, poverty is associated with black people, rage is associated with black people, violence associated with black people, and then there's the other side of white people that is portrayed as angels, as the good people, as the ones that know what to do right, as the ones that are never making mistakes, and if they do, it was not intentional. But for black people, anytime you do something, it might not be intentional, but nobody will believe that because you are black, and it has to be the violence in you that is prompting you to do the things that you have done. Now, that is the society that America has made after the slavery and everything bad that they have done to black people. Now, you might be wondering also that anytime that America has a problem, or actually any other races of people, whenever they have a problem, a big problem that they do not know how to fix or sort at that time, they call on or they call on black people. Now, that is a bit ironical, but that is the fact. They call on black people to help them solve that situation. They call on black people for advice. They call on black people for help. They call on black people for, support, yeah? And you would be wondering, why would you be mistreating someone that you so much need? And they would talk about all manner of things. We want to be segregated, we want to live alone, we do not enjoy black people company, black people are useless, we need to depopulate them, we need to have a portion of them killed, yeah? And they have those discussions as white people, and sometimes you wonder, because now it gets to a point where they need black people, and they actually forget everything they have said in the past, and they come to look for black people for help, for support. And black people, I don't know if this is sad or a good thing, they will come through. They will always help. Whenever they can, they will always come through. And that is just black people for you. I mean, they are not complicated people to understand. And sometimes you wonder how someone decides that they're going to hate them just on the basis of skin color, and put all these evil, all these bad things on them and on their names. Yeah, black people have had a lot of contributions to America, and I have done a video in the past. If you have not watched it, go watch it. The video that was talking about the black inventions, the things that black people have invented, thousands and thousands of things, important things that black people have invented, but that is omitted in the history of America, and they do not teach it. And that's actually not by mistake. It's by design that they do not teach that, because they want to pass a certain narrative to people, and to kids especially. Kids are the most important people in a society, because they are the tomorrow of that nation. So they make sure that kids do not have that kind of knowledge about black people, so that by the time they get into power and stuff like politics, they do not recognize black people, and they still see black people the same way their ancestors saw them. That is the main intention of them not teaching black history, them not teaching the good things that black people do, not appreciating enough what black people have done. When a white person does something, it could be something as small as winning an Olympics, they will broadcast it everywhere. They'll make sure that that is news for an entire time, yeah? But the same situation, a black person winning the same marathon, the same way or even better, that will just be, like brushed off as if it was not that important. It was, it was not a very big marathon. So yeah, there's that. Now, all these things, sometimes you might be looking at them and thinking, why do they do that to black people? It's only because they are trying to drive a certain narrative to people and to everyone. And sadly enough, this narrative also gets into black kids, and if you're not careful as a parent to teach your children about black history and what black people have done for themselves and for the society and for America as a whole, they will fail to understand that they are that important. Yeah, they will grow thinking that they are the useless race, and then there is the white people that are superior, the white people that are privileged, those people that are, they are the everything that you'd want to be. Now that is the danger of parents not teaching their children the Black history. You need to do that. You need to find videos talking about Black excellence. Teach your children that. Let them know that they are capable of these good things. They are capable of the big things that they dream of. Yeah, it's not, you don't have to be white for you to achieve good things in life. You can do that. There are Black people that have done that. Look at Obama, for instance. He has done it, and at the very top. Yeah, so make sure that your kids are learning these things as early as possible. Black excellence. Yeah, make sure they interact with that kind of content more often than games. So guys, I hope that you're also keeping safe from wherever you're watching me from. New subscribers, thank you so much for joining the family. I hope that you're feeling comfortable each and every day here, and I really appreciate your decision to join this part of YouTube. And for those people that are watching me and you have not subscribed to my channel, kindly, I'm requesting that you subscribe to my channel, help this channel to grow and reach as many people as possible. Also guys, I ask you to like my videos and leave a comment. The reason as to why you need to do that is when you like the video, it goes viral. When you like it, it gets to more people, and YouTube recommends it to more people, so that we spread this kind of awareness to people. And yeah, I will appreciate if you do that. Thank you so much guys. I will see you on my next video. Bye for now.